It's time to reset this thing a little bit. I have a different reset in mind than the Davos crowd because it's time.
And I said, why are they doing this? And all of a sudden it's a finance answer. For a stock price to go up, you need a new drug. And that's what kind of happened to me. I started this manifesto 2.5 years ago. And it sucked all the energy out of me. It's because I just kept going at it. And I smelled a rat. Because on September 17, 2019, the repo market collapsed.
You remember that? I remember that.
I remember that clearly. I said, geez, something happened. Because the last time that happened was 2008. Because we're in the finance side. And then all of a sudden my friend calls me from Singapore. He says, hey, there's something going on in China. I went, being a suspicious mind, I said, well, you have the repo market collapse and something happens in China. Are they related? And that's when I started tracking you.
Yeah, so I'm a quick learner eventually. At first, I was all about this. This was like the virus. And now I'm looking back on it and I realized that I think I was duped for a while. I honestly think that China was sending out, remember, I didn't realize how much they controlled everything that comes out of there. So I wasn't aware that I'm consuming all this stuff, and there were these videos of people falling over in the street, just keeling over. And there were pictures of hallways full of dead people. So I thought that's what was coming, right? And now we know that, I think the earliest version of that virus was worse. Of course, they get less bad over time. That's just the nature of viral evolution. So maybe that first alpha version was a little worse, but China was exporting fear to us. We were buying it. I was buying it.
Right.
Right, I did, and now I'm so glad to hear you connect those dots, because now I look back and the repo market was blowing up in September. So COVID was the best thing that could have ever happened.
Exactly.
To a Federal Reserve that needed an out to print trillions.
It was a distraction.
Well, it sure worked out that way for them.
Yeah.
Hey, look at the genetic structure of this coronavirus, this COVID-19 virus, the SARS-CoV-2, and when we look at it, it looks manipulated to me. It looks like it came out of a lab, and there's a bunch of reasons for that, and I've got whole programs on that. But I was positive about that. Of course, I got called a conspiracy theorist, and I got shut down, all kinds of things. And then it was a year later, finally the media was like, well, maybe we know about this. So here's what we know. We know that there was a FOIA request, and we got Anthony Fauci's emails out, right? And on January 29th, 2020, he's blasting out these emails to people saying, hey, we got to get our arms around this. Oh no, this looks like, we got to control the narrative. The interesting part is when he sent these emails out saying we have to say that this came from nature, not from a lab, he involved all these other people in the world, top virologists, right? Christian Andersen from the Cripps Institute, Marian Koopsman from he was Dutch, a German guy, Christian Drosten, all these top virologists, right? Nobody from the NIH. They have thousands of scientists. He didn't tap one of them. And so they went...
NIH, that's just...
Yeah, National Institutes of Health, which, he's head of NIAID, but he, Collins was in on this, but that's it. And so we know from these emails that they were all talking about it. What we can't tell you is what they were talking about, because they're all blanked out. You have these different FOIA exclusions. B4 is to prevent you from hearing personal identifying information. B5 is for this other reason. Anyways, all these B4, B5, B6 exceptions, all gray. And even people like sitting congressmen and senators, U.S. senators, are unable to see what was in those emails because Fauci, a career bureaucrat, is just standing saying, oh no, you can't see this stuff. So we don't know what was in these emails, but we know for a fact that they were talking about how they could marginalize anybody out there who was talking about this being anything other than coming from a natural source. Now, China had a strong, compelling interest to show this came from a natural source. Within a month of that, China had sequenced and tested 80,000 separate animal samples because they were desperate. Can we show this came from a bat or a civet or a pangolin or a bear? They didn't care. They tested everything and they couldn't find this in any other species in a way that would signify it came from those species. Because if you saw the movie Contagion with Dustin Hoffman, right, the whole thing is who's patient zero? Nobody was interested in patient zero. That's when I became concerned. I knew this came from a lab because nobody was talking about it. Nobody was asking any questions. There was no intrepid New York Times reporter asking the WHO officials, have we identified patient zero? We know this came from a lab in the key signature. If we can talk about this. This is okay, because we're going to talk about this little tiny thing. It's just 4 amino acids long in the coronavirus, in the spike protein. It's called the furin cleavage site. It's a thing. A furin is a protease. It's a thing you put into if you're a researcher and you want to make something more deadly, give it a gain of function. So we've done the same thing. We've put those same cleavage sites into influenzas. That was the thing that got the whole gain of function stopped back in 2014. They said, look, we're not doing this because somebody had put that little thing into an influenza and they made a killer bug. If that thing had ever gotten out, like 20% death.
That was like putting a V8 in a Volkswagen.
Yeah, it's literally putting yeah, exactly. Or a bullet in a gun.
Yeah.
The gun's okay, but it's really a lot more lethal with a bullet, right? So they put this site in, right? Somebody did. And that was the smoking gun. So when I put out that first video in May of 2020, I put it right up there, like any journalist ask and only ask this one question: where did this furin cleavage site come from? Now this got really dark for me just a month ago when somebody inside of a system was checking this stuff out and sent me the sequence that coded for that. So the way this works is you have these little pieces of RNA, the 4 different nucleotides, and it codes for that furin cleavage site. He said, here's the thing, when you go into the system, which has all the genetic codes of everything in the world, it's the BLAST system scientists use it all the time. He went in and he searched it, and he only found that exact sequence in 2 places. One was in an obscure bacterium that didn't have anything to do with viruses. And the second was, it shows up in about 12 separate Moderna patents starting in 2015. That exact sequence. It's very, very rare.
Now we're definitely going to get a drone strike. No, because I was just watching the news, Pfizer and Moderna made the most money.
Yeah.
And always follow the money.
Always, but this should have been like, this is a legit question. And so where was the New York Times? Where is any inquiry on this? Like, that's a legit question. Like, can you explain why? So here's the math on this. To get that, since it's 19 nucleotides long, and there's 4 different nucleotides, the math says there's a 1 in 283 billion chance of coming on that sequence accidentally, randomly. 1 in 283 billion. Your chance of winning the Powerball is like 50 times higher, right? It's so, but that sequence, like somebody ought to be asking the question saying, okay, it's just a question. How'd that get there? Do we know, right? So there's a lot going on here where, again, there's just a lot of coincidences that don't smell right. And of course, it doesn't smell right to me that Fauci, a bureaucrat, gets to shield his email substance from sitting elected officials. That doesn't feel right.
And they also, because it's Fox News, you got to take it with a grain of salt. They call him the richest bureaucrat in history,
I think Pelosi's giving him a run for money when she's elected.
But this is kind of the point, because I met Chris more on the finance side and all this. If you understand the stock market, I was just talking to my doctor who gave me hydroxychloroquine, whatever it is. And another guy gave me that ivermectin.
Yeah.
And I said, why are they doing this? And all of a sudden it's a finance answer. For a stock price to go up, you need a new drug.
Mm-hmm.
And so by coming out so they censor basically the hydroxychloroquine. They produce these 2 new vaccines. The stock price goes through the roof.
Yeah, and the whole pharma industry was having trouble because the big major drugs had sort of been found, right? Antibiotics and all this, and they were down to like these really weird orphan drugs where only a few thousand people get the syndrome, and then they have to charge $400,000 for a dose of it, whatever, right? So their model was really starting to
die, right?
Yeah, over time, and that's okay. Maybe that's okay because we'd figured out how to,
get people healthy.
Yeah, as humans, we'd figured this out, and that's good. Like it should be okay that an industry takes itself out of business over time, right? I'm okay with that. They weren't okay with that, and so, you know what? I'm okay. If Pfizer says they want to try and make money, that's okay. But what's not okay is when the people who are supposed to be regulating them are actually not doing that and just helping them. So here's what we know. Pfizer ran some trials, really shoddily run, on the vaccine itself. And then the last thing we heard is the FDA told the judge that they want 75 years to be able to release that data to the American people.
Jesus.
They reviewed it in 108 days, but they want 75 years. The year 2096 is when they wanted to release that. Now, a judge just came out and said, no, you have to release 18,500 pages a month, but it's still like 90 days that it's going to take us to begin to see this. That's okay. I'll guarantee you when we get in there, we're going to find things out where we're going to go, what were these regulators doing or not doing? And the answer is going to be really disappointing. So Pfizer gets to make money. They can try and cut corners, but our regulators ought not to have been doing that. It's time to reset this thing a little bit. I have a different reset in mind than the Davos crowd because it's time.